Thank you very much, gentlemen. I'm here with BJERGSEN after the TSM victory over FLYQUEST. Now, BJERGSEN, I know you guys got to be feeling good. Talk to me a little bit about your specific matchup this game against High. We know that this is an age-old matchup. You guys have met on the Rift tons of times before. What was it like this time around?
I felt it was very jungle influenced in both games. I got ganked at level 2. Moon just did red buff and then ganked me right away. So it was very different from the games that I usually play because it's kind of like a high-risk jungle path. But I think Moon pulled it off pretty well. And I played both games being a little bit behind from the get-go. But other than that, it was just pretty boring lane matchups. I mean, we were just farming. There was no real killing or anything. So it was mostly just about team fights and everything else outside lane.
Speaking about things being a little different than normal and talking about the team as a whole, I want to bring up the fact that you guys, you got your win here. Things are looking upwards, but TSM still not sitting in that first place spot after being the reigning Spring Split champions. How do you guys feel right now about where the team is and where the team's headed after almost being halfway through Summer Split?
I think it's kind of natural and expected. A lot of people expected us to drop off a little bit after MSI because we didn't have the same amount of practice as other teams going into the split. But I think we're picking it up pretty fast. I think the last couple of opponents that we played haven't been the top teams in NA, so we're still yet to prove ourselves against IMT, CLG, and having convincing matches against them. So looking forward, it's all about Rift Rivals and beating the other best teams in NA.
Speaking of those other best teams in NA, it's actually two of those best teams that TSM's losses have been against so far, Dignitas and Immortals. So stepping away from the TSM lens directly for just a second, the Dignitas Immortals matchup is happening later this weekend. Who do you think is going to prevail in that one?
Oh, man. I think both teams have really strong strengths. I think actually Dignitas is really, really good at playing against Baron, contrary to what memes have been in the past. They're really good at just being willing to rush that objective, but IMT has looked really clean, so I'm probably still going to give it to IMT, but it should be a fun matchup to watch.
Definitely should be a good one. And one last question for you guys. This split, there is a lot of teams in the conversations for a lot of fans and a lot of analysts that could be vying for that #1 position at the end of summer. People are talking about CLG, Dignitas, Immortals, Cloud9, and of course TSM. Of those teams, are there any that are particularly on your radar that you're really looking out for?
Oh, man, I think it's a bit early to tell. I think Immortals has been the team that's looked like they've improved the most since last split. They look like a pretty average team last split, but with the addition of Big Smithy and their new coach, they really look like a top team. So I think having solid infrastructure and coaching staff is what's going to make a team good in playoffs, not just in the regular season. So probably Immortals.
All right, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, from BJERGSEN, TSM's mid laner. One more time for him and the victorious TSM after their win over FlyQuest. We're going to go ahead and send things over to the analyst desk now. Take it away, boys.
Thank you very much, Captain Flowers. BJERGSEN and the rest of TSM got the 2-0 victory over FlyQuest. High in the mid lane in this matchup. I mean, it was talked about coming up to it, and High himself, he even said, there was a point in time when I was the dominant mid laner between the two of us. But funnily enough, we end up with a Zilean Malzahar matchup of all things.
Not what you would have guessed.
Between these two mid laners. I did not expect that coming into the weekend. But TSM gets the victory here in Game 2 in what to me felt like a very FlyQuest-style game.
And I think you can kind of look at the team comp maybe out of TSM for a reason. Every single champion here is pretty happy in a skirmish, very scrappy game. Obviously, Kled being able to get remounts, Tristana getting resets, Thresh not being very ultimate dependent, Lee Sin's a very scrappy jungler, and then Zilean is just happy to revive people, and as long as you're not chain CCing and stopping him from being able to do that, he's a very comfortable champion in the skirmish situation as well. So I think FlyQuest has this ability to kind of drag you into their style. Talking about these really, really early ganks, you heard BJERGSEN say, I got level 2 gank 2 games in a row.
Yeah, between the two junglers, there were 5 ganks to the mid lane within the first 5 minutes of the game.
Yeah, so that's kind of how you get pulled into the style, but this time around TSM having a comp that's great, we will win if we keep playing fights every minute, and they were able to get a massive lead off the back of just constant team fighting.
And to a degree, I think it speaks to what TSM's been vocal about throughout this split in terms of, broadening their strategic playbook and saying, okay, we're not only going to play through BJERGSEN, we're trying to find our way back to being a multi-threat team that can perform on the international stage, and this is one way of getting there. Putting BJERGSEN on a comfort pick, yes, we've seen him on Zilean a million times, but something that's a little bit more supportive and needs to sit behind others who carry.
And I think the way that Sven played this game kind of goes to that, where there's a lot of early attention out of FlyQuest onto BJERGSEN, and Sven answered that, where he traded the summoner back once BJERGSEN had a slash blown early. They repeat ganked him, almost died. Then Sven comes and they get a kill. So he was answering that pressure, and then as soon as the mid lane stabilized a little bit more, he started going top over and over and over again to get that Kled pick going. So it didn't feel like he wanted to play around mid lane, kind of got his hand forced to it, and then once he could get out of mid lane, started playing around top side.
But as was mentioned, there was tons of action in this game, fights left and right. The one that we want to take a look at comes 1945 into the game. A beautiful collapse from TSM into the bot lane, picks up 3 kills and multiple turrets across the map.
That's the big thing, is it feels like when FlyQuest has something go wrong for them, it goes really, really wrong. So, okay, your top lane has been getting picked on over and over. You try and teleport down with the Tom Kench to answer it. BIOFROST already roaming down. Good answer by TSM, able to get this collapse, and they get a triple kill here with, SVENSKEREN coming at the very end. But you see High, not even on the turret yet, decide to stick up there and trade. And it's something that he's renowned for, always wanting to trade. And that's why it used to be so hard to play against C9, because they would trade out objectives nonstop. But when you're constantly losing fights and skirmishes pretty heavily, it's hard to trade effectively. So they kept giving up way too many turrets. They get 1 in the top lane, but they lose 2 in the bot lane, including an inhibitor turret, and then they lose a mid lane turret as well. So it's just not good trades, and that's why once something goes wrong for FlyQuest, it goes wrong fast.
Yeah, again, right there at that 20-minute mark, you can see a jump of about 3K in the gold lead for TSM, where it was previously only about 1.5 to 2K.
Yeah, it might be hard to tell how big of a jump that is, because the gold graph goes all the way down to 13K.
Right, exactly, yeah, perspective.
It's worth noting that is a 3,000 gold play swing right there from that 19-minute skirmish.
Yeah.